We spent the whole night down at the docks, following loose leads and possible sightings. Every now and then we would run into someone who maybe saw something. A person who looked kinda like that, I guess. Yeah, from that angle. That might be her. If this British arsehole was gonna hire some third-rate hunters to go after his runaway, good fucking luck to them. I'd managed to pull some recordings for Fia to pick through from various surveillance cameras. The problem was that the whole area was individual, privatized business lots. No one was bothering with surveillance on the street. As long as they had a good view of their own property, that was all that mattered. We were basically moving block to block, focusing on recently stacked liners and ships in the process of being loaded. You would think that there would be plenty of opportunity to hitch a ride down here, but the security once on board was tight. That was the biggest hurdle, not getting on board, staying on board. If a stowaway was found, they were dealt with quickly and efficiently. Many a body was found floating in the bay that had belonged to a stowaway that hadn't hid well enough. Heat signature scanner drones, ultraviolet energy signature scanners, and good old sniffer dogs. Nothing came into or left this country via this place that Border Patrol didn't know about. That said, just because they knew didn't mean they stopped it. There was plenty of room for bribes and corruption, but you needed to have the cash to make them look the other way, and as far as we could tell, our target was flat broke. Part of me was hoping we would find someone who would tell us that she had managed to get onto a ship, then departed. Then she would be out of my hair and someone else's problem. Good riddance. I was not that lucky though. "Sure thing, Cobber," the security guard said, nodding enthusiastically. He was your classic heavy set type with a shaved head and a beard you could hide in. "Yeah, I seen her. Had to kick her out of one of the storerooms out back." He pointed to an alleyway behind a large building, a shipping company's front office. "How long ago was this?" I asked, hopeful. When I came on shift a couple of hours ago. She was fucking around with something, looked like some data cables. I tried to question her and she damn near kicked the back door off its hinges, then leapt the perimeter fence like a fucking springbok." "You mean kicked the door open?" asked Reva skeptically. "Did I fucking stutter? Kicked it off its hinges. And it ain't no normal door. That thing's mag-locked, reinforced, quad hinges." I gave him a doubtful look. "You think I'm bullshitting? Come on, I'll show ya." He swiped his security card over the pad on the gateway behind him and held it open for us. "Come on, they're replacing it right now anyway." Reva and I shared a look but followed him inside. Either the door wasn't as strong as he was making out, or it had already been open. Even with augments, it would be a tall order to boot a door clean off the hinges with that level of reinforcement. I'd seen pictures of our Mark. She didn't have the industrial augments or capabilities to do something like that. We strode down the side of the building that proclaimed it as part of the Sandry Shipping Co. The alleyway was a service road, really, to the storerooms at the back. It was actually 2 sea containers that had been welded together and fitted with doors, and then put up on blocks. From what I could see as we approached, it looked to be a resting place for unused tech. Tradies were there repairing the damage at the back and the doors stood open. I could see all the unused data slates and computers. Some out-of-date commercial-grade office gear was neatly arrayed along one wall. 2 gnomes in fluoro-orange work shirts were just wrapping up their work. I stepped inside the room, looking around at its contents. More of what I'd seen from the outside. The light in the room seemed a little bit off. I looked up in front of the doors to see a square hole in the roof, where a panel of some kind should have been. I could see the smoke-filled sky overhead, gulls wheeling far above for discarded food, having given up on the polluted bay. I waved a hand to one of the tradies. He looked up from assembling some kind of lock mechanism. "Hey mate, what's with the hole? I thought it was the door she wrecked." He shook his head. "Nah mate, the door's how she got out, but she came in through the roof." "What? Unbolted it or something?" He laughed. "Huh, hell no. Ripped the vent right off the frame. They weren't exactly high tensile bolts, but still it's bloody impressive. I looked to the other end of the room, where the other gnome was testing the door, making sure it all lined up properly. You still got the old door around? He jerked a thumb over his shoulder. Out back. Did a number on that too. Never seen anything like it. I didn't bother the other gnome and went out the back via the front door I'd walked in through. Reva was out there already with the security guard looking at the fence, 2.5 meters high, serrated steel palisade. The old door lay on the bitumen, discarded behind the building. Okay, now I was starting to worry. It was as to spec as the guard had said, and while the hinges were where she had aimed her kick, strong as they were still the weakest point. Despite that, it was definitely a solid structure. She was far and away more powerful than I could have given credit to someone her size. Jasper might have been able to do something like this with a good couple of well-aimed blows, but it would probably mess up his hands. What the hell was I dealing with here? Reva approached me as I crouched over the door, inspecting the dent in the metal next to the center hinge. Know anyone as small as her that can output that kind of power? I asked, pointing at the dent. I didn't look back at her as she replied. No, but she isn't exactly human. That's gotta count for something, right? I grimaced. Every time I find out something about this case, it answers one question and gives me 2 more. I looked around the compound. There wasn't much to write home about. There must have been a reason she'd been picking through that particular storeroom. I went back inside, looking over the racks of kit. It was moments like this that I missed my other sight, but it was about time I brushed up on my investigation skills. There had to be a reason to risk being found. I called out to the guard. He took a step inside the now crowded space, but didn't enter fully. Any idea what she was messing around with in here? He just shrugged. She was picking through the racks down at the end by the door. I squeezed past the tradesman as we passed each other. Everything at this end was spare parts, but dismantled. It wasn't meant to be that way, though. She must have been stripping the gear down for parts, looking for something in particular. Some panels of old portable transformers and similar had clearly just been ripped open with brute force. Some parts had clearly been delicately dismantled. I took photos of all the parts and sent them through to FIA, making a point of taking pictures of any serial numbers that were visible. I stepped back into the sunlight and squinted up at the sky. The smog had been blown out to sea by a strong easterly breeze. What are you trying to do out here? I asked, no one in particular. This AI, android, robot thing was just taking left turn after left turn when I was expecting her to hang a right. If whatever she was after was important enough and she was as dangerous as Rio implied, why hadn't she attacked the security guard and kept on working? But she was a creation that ran on logic. She was a construct, just a series of programs and protocols. Whatever she was doing, there was good reason for it. I just didn't know what it was yet. I needed to learn more about Turing children. They were such heavily guarded secrets. It wasn't like I could just go down to the local library. The UK had strict laws in place to protect their intellectual property. No wonder that British fuckknuckle wanted to... My train of thought halted abruptly as a thought occurred to me. I knew another British fuckknuckle, and while I wasn't sure the two of them were acquainted, it was probably my best bet into finding out more about our little robot girlie. I was not a fan of Tobias's bookshop. It felt woefully out of date, and it was so thick with magic, stepping through that curtain was like passing through a cold breeze. A cold breeze that could read your mind. I could have asked Fia to give him a heads up. I could have just called, but I wanted to get this info clear. And besides, I could play nice for the sake of a case, or more importantly, the sake of a paycheck. Reva followed me down the steps from street level. We hit the bottom step and I shivered instinctively. I paused, then put my hand into the thick red curtain and pushed it to one side. Tobias wasn't in his usual spot behind the counter. I looked around the store, books stacked high in shelves, most arranged neatly, many still piled on the floor due to lack of space or yet uncatalogued. The whole shop had a feeling like it went on further than it should, into the back corners and far into shelves. Another chill passed over me and I frowned. I didn't like being scanned. The doorway to the private rooms behind the counter was ajar. I didn't bother calling into the opening. I just called out to the shop in general. Look, the sooner I can talk to him, the sooner I'll leave. There was no response. Reva leant in close and whispered in my ear. Who are you talking to? The shop, I said plainly. The shop? And does it talk back? She said skeptically. This shop is alive. He likes company, so he gave it a mind of its own. I looked over my shoulder to see her giving me a funny look. You think I'm mad? A little, she said in a hushed tone. Okay, so why are you whispering? She opened her mouth to answer and paused. She had just realized that I hadn't been whispering, but she had. I smiled and turned back to the empty shop. I'm not here to fight him, I just need his help. No pages rustled, the curtains didn't move, but I felt a feeling like a light gust of wind move across my skin. Reva shivered. Despite her not being magically attuned, even she had felt that. I could hear movement in the private rooms, footsteps. At last, a figure emerged. Tobias was about my height, thicker through the chest and wider shoulders. His dreadlocks fell freely around his shoulders. His vibrant green eyes were set off by his dark skin. Magical symbols and runes were tattooed all over his body in very specific arrangements. Some I understood, some I could only guess at. He was wearing his usual leather vest and van braces. He carried a mug with a teaspoon. The mug had the slogan, "Reading may harm idiocy," across it. He grinned wide, displaying his perfect teeth. Hello, hello, I thought I smelt blood and gunpowder. I narrowed my eyes. Better than mouldy paper and dust. Ouch! Call me a doctor. I'm wounded. I went to give him a not very polite reply, but Reva shoved me from behind, reminding me to bite my tongue. Look, I've got some questions. I was hoping you could give me a hand. He smiled over his cup of tea. No, not really. I'm good, thanks. Really? Reva stepped in beside me. You're not even going to hear him out? His eyes flicked to her. He didn't respond to the question. You must be Reva. Reva's mouth twitched slightly and I couldn't tell if she was amused or pissed off. It was a similar look on her either way. I am. Fia speaks very highly of you. He looked back to me. But then she speaks very highly of you too, so I guess no one's perfect. He sat down behind his counter and rested his cup of tea on a coaster. Are the insults all part of the service in here? I asked, making a gesture encompassing the shop. Sorry, I don't mean to be unpleasant, but you do make it kind of easy. All I did was walk in. Sometimes existing is enough. I turned to walk out. Fuck it, I knew this was a bad idea. He got up and reached over the counter, catching my sleeve. Okay, I'll stop. I turned and he waved me back. Come on, I'll be nice. Sit down. I looked to the obvious lack of chairs. Where? He looked confused for a moment, then peered over the counter. Sorry, I forgot. They clutter up the place. There was the sound of air rushing, being displaced, then a soft thud as two stools shimmered into existence, falling a few centimeters and landing in front of us. It was kind of like a hologram taking focus, but when I reached out to touch them, they were solid. They weren't anything special, just a pair of old bar stools, faded leather and scuffed chrome. Did you? Reva trailed off, pointing at the stools. Just make those appear? He had that cocky little fucking grin on his face. Yes and no. It's complicated. He motioned with his free hand. Now sit down. Come on, you're giving me vertigo. I reluctantly took a seat. I felt more uncomfortable sitting down than I did standing up, and it wasn't only because the padding on the stool had worn thin. So, why did you decide to risk my scathing remarks? I didn't want to come here, I grumbled. But you're my best bet for answers. You could have sent your sister. I didn't want to make her the middleman again. I figured this was faster. Faster ain't always better. But then you like a quick finish, I expect. He chuckled and winked at me. That was basic even for you. The classics are classics for a reason. He took another sip of his tea, then removed the tea bag, squeezing it between thumb and forefinger and dropping it on the plate with some crumbs. All right, hit me. What's the big emergency? Turing children. What do you know about them? His face took on an inquisitive look and he leant forward slightly. Be more specific. I can't. I don't actually know what I'm after. He grunted. Uh-huh. And your interest in them? He was prying for an answer that he already knew. My initial response was to deny anything he asked. But to get the knowledge I wanted, this was going to have to be a two-way conversation. Besides, even though this was valuable information, and as much as I didn't usually like Tobias, I did actually trust him to keep anything I told him to himself. I shifted, trying to get comfortable. There's one loose here in the city. There's an order out to deactivate it. You mean kill it, he said flatly. Be right up your alley, gunning down some innocent. For fuck's sake, Tobias, I said, exasperated. It's a damn robot, not a person. I thought you told me to be the gun. You said someone had to be. I was very specifically talking about killing mass murderers, not gunning down escaped slaves. Slaves? Isn't that going a bit far? You ever had a conversation with one of them? He asked coolly, taking a sip of his tea. I shook my head. They think and act like us. They have emotions. They have opinions. Sure, it's all based on ones and zeros, but they think. He tapped the side of his head, then his chest above his heart. Therefore, they are. I was given to understand they were automatons made to do labor, assist the military, other high-risk jobs. He nodded his head impatiently from side to side. Yeah, but the problem is to make them efficient, to make them operate properly, make the right decisions, react to our whims, habits, mannerisms. They need to think like us and be like us. They are far more developed than just some execute an order program. I thought back to Eve, the unstable AI I'd loosed in the building in which Sierra had made her headquarters. She had displayed strong emotions, especially when confronted with the death of her circuit jockey. She wasn't even that advanced. A Turing child, on the other hand. Tobias narrowed his eyes as he watched me think. You've had contact with one. He meant the child, but I was thinking of Eve. I started to nod, then stopped. No, not a child, no. Something occurred to me. Someone did have an interaction with her. They said she begged for help? He shrugged. Sure, wouldn't surprise me. He looked from me to Reva, then back again. How'd she end up here anyway? It was my turn to shrug. We don't know yet, but we think she's actually trying to leave. She was down by the docks trying to get onto a boat. Probably wants to get to a country without a standing kill order against her, he said cynically. I ignored the comment, despite how true it was. She busted into a storage unit, then ran for it when the security arrived. Well, one thing's for sure, Tobias continued as he got to his feet and walked back into his private room, fetching something. She'll power down in a few days. You won't even need to kill her. Just recover the body. Reva spoke up, calling through the doorway to him. Why? He reappeared with a plate of cookies. Children are designed to be controlled, managed, but not by any laws of robotics or some crap, or any compliancy software. It's simpler than that. The way they stay alive, for want of a better term, is the way they're charged. You mean to say her battery will just run out? He nodded, taking a bite out of a choc chip cookie and passed the plate to me. I waved it away. Reva took one. Just like a toy? Another nod. Yeah, usually you could track her if she legs it and then powers down, but maybe she's found a way of deactivating the tracker, who knows? Well, that made my job both easier and harder. If she powered down, at least she couldn't run, but then she couldn't catch anyone's attention either. If she just crashed out in an old warehouse somewhere, we might never find her. Absent-mindedly, I reached down and grabbed a cookie as I thought. I raised it to my lips and then paused. a light bulb turning on in my mind. So the charging cable, plug, whatever, it's not conventional? She couldn't just buy one? Nah, special design. And it's not like a plug, there's a whole secondary connection with tailored programming required to make the charge stable. I looked at Reva. That's what she was doing in the storage unit. She was trying to cobble together something to charge herself. Tobias nodded vigorously, his mouth full of cookie and tea. He swallowed quickly. She would really have to be clued in to build something from scratch. Wouldn't she just know how her own body works? He chuckled. Do you know how your digestive tract works? Good point. So these Exodus models are strong and smart then? I thought out loud. Tobias nearly choked on his next mouthful. What? He coughed crumbs all over the counter and books. Did you say Exodus? We both stared at him, shocked at his reaction. Yeah, Exodus Model K. He slumped back in the chair. Well, it was nice knowing you. Have a good day. Wait, what? He looked bemused, his eyes staring into the middle distance, then focused back on me as I repeated myself. What are you talking about? Trust me, Whitlock, you do not want to get into it with this thing. Walk away now, unless you want to end up a corpse on the PCPD's kill counter. Thing. It was a she and a person 2 seconds ago. Yeah, because that was before you told me it was a machine designed purely for killing. So Exodus models are what, military then? He regarded me for a long moment, weighing up his answer. Look, Exodus models, they're exclusively military. And not your standard soldier either. These things are sent out on assassinations and wet work. He locked eyes with me. What took you and your buddies, a team of 12, these things do in pairs or solo. He laughed a short bark of a laugh. Ha! You see that thing? Smoke its ass. You probably won't be able to, but give it a shot, right? Reva held up a hand like a schoolchild. I'm sorry. How do you know all these things? He wiggled a finger at her in the air and tutted. My life experience is not part of the deal, love. But trust me, these are bad news. The Green Man only knows how this one got here. I hadn't spoken. I was too busy pulling puzzle pieces together in my mind that didn't fit. Reva was trying to get him to open up about his past. When I came out of my thoughts, she didn't kill the guard. They both stopped talking and looked at me. What? Tobias asked, perplexed. If she's as deadly as you say, and remorseless, why didn't she kill the guard? He busted in on her harvesting tech parts for a charger that she needs to stay alive. She didn't kill a dock worker either. Surely she's trained in close quarters combat. She shouldn't have a problem killing people. She should have gotten on board and then just wiped out anyone she found. What's her game? Why play it soft? He opened his mouth in answer, then shut it and frowned. You got me there. He took another bite of his cookie and then dipped it in his tea, smiling at me. But that sounds like your problem, not mine. We left him to his tea and cookies, rising up to street level and breathing in air that stank of exhaust fumes and week-old trash. I looked around the city, the imposing structures that were the CBD, skyscrapers so tall you couldn't see any detail on the upper levels. People trudged by on the street, going to or from their jobs looking like automatons themselves, emotionless, soulless, minds on autopilot. If one of them was a touring child, would I be able to pick them out of the crowd? This target had showed more emotion in one interaction than these people probably showed in an entire day at work. What's going on in that head of yours there? Reva asked as she looked at me thoughtfully. Why did she beg? Security is tight on the liners, but it shouldn't be an issue for her if she's as dangerous as Tobias says. Maybe she's malfunctioning? I frowned. I feel, therefore I think. What? It's just the other part of that saying. I feel, therefore I think, therefore I am. I was cut off by a call coming in over my comm. I froze when I saw the caller ID. Tentatively, I answered, feeling my blood pressure rise. Mr. Whitlock, have you reconsidered my offer? Thank you very much for listening to Cyphers Edge. If you enjoy this podcast, a subscription to the channel would be most appreciated. If you'd like more content from me, you can find me on various social media platforms. I also have a Discord. It's a small community, but we'd love to see you there to talk about the genre and any other topics that relate to the podcast, literature, or sci-fi and cyberpunk. As always, the script and narration were done by JJ Brandis, myself, and the music was done by Cale McLeish. Copyright Cyphers Edge 2026.